Welcome, brother. How are you? Happy Thursday.
Yo, I'm grateful to be alive and happy to be back here with you, sister. How you doing?
I am in the presence of celebrity because I saw your Forbes magazine post this morning and I thought, oh my goodness, how do I get to be this close to uh, IT royalty? So congratulations. It was a great honor.
I appreciate that. I felt really honored to be uplifted in that way, and just highlighted for the accomplishments and the achievements that we have. So I really appreciated that.
Right. It was a lot. It was a lot to kind of suck in because they were talking about some things that were not familiar to me, like IT, cloud business, and using all these IT words. So I said the people need to hear what this young gifted and black man is over there accomplishing so they can see him. And listen, you thought you had people asking questions about your singlehood in back channels on the Instagram. They gonna really be doing it now because you were the only one smiling in the picture.
Oh, was I the only one?
Yeah, it was you had a beautiful smile. You represented us very well. I said,
That's
look at my
good.
brother.
Good. I didn't realize I was the only one though. I thought that that the other guys were doing it as well. But honestly, I really didn't. I wasn't really deeply present in that moment.
Really?
I felt like I bombed it, to be real.
Really? Why?
It wasn't my best. It wasn't my best because that night before I went to bed like 4 o'clock in the morning because
Mhm.
I on the grind. And so truth be told, when I got into that session, I really felt like, I was lagging. So,
Mm.
the I feel like the host of it was really great. She asked some really great questions and all this. And, she had really high energy. It was a lot of words happening at first. And I felt my mind drifting. So my mom was drifting off, and then as soon as, I kind of got alarmed when she said, "So Xadean," and I'm like, "Oh shit, they talking to me."
So what you have, which is common for many people, is you were distracted, even in this most important. It could have been a function of your anxiety. You never know. That sometimes, in an anxious state, we get more distracted and have a harder time accessing our mind and organizing our brain, which is just a function of our anxiety. So, does the great Xavier Amasi get nervous sometimes?
I mean, I wasn't nervous in this situation because, I was like really comfortable under the content and everything. But I do think there is really a true thing in getting a lot of rest before you do
Yeah,
an event like that because definitely I was struggling, you
right.
know, to keep my alertness mentally.
Mhm.
And then, so like when you see it, you probably see me in there and it's looking like I'm falling asleep. My eyelids are falling asleep, but the answer that I'm having, they kind of like, you know, they're coming off the top. And it wasn't like it's not the best that I've done.
Well, rest does equal restoration. So, I agree with you. Getting good rest is paramount. For those who don't know who we are, I am Sarita. I am the better half of the sibling pair. And for right now, we are the same age. So we are Irish twins. Our time is coming short, brother. I keep looking at the calendar and your birthday's right around the corner. And I'm thinking, oh, he's gonna be my big brother again. I'm gonna be locked in that closet. And this is my wonderful brother, Xadean Amasi, who we get together in the Rose Garden, which is an ode to my grandmother who taught us, who raised us, and then shared us many, many beautiful gifts to just discuss. And we're happy that you all joined along to listen to us. This is our safe space. We're hoping it's a safe space for you. And then we hope that we bring light and love to the world because me and my brother do this anyway. We didn't have cameras on us before, but we talk about world events and share our experiences, and you all just get to go along for the ride. So it's our Thursday therapy. We are entrepreneurs and we need this to kind of keep ourselves grounded. And boy, brother, was this week not full of gossip and things for me to talk about today. Um, I was overwhelmed by people. And I'm a psychologist, so to be overwhelmed by people is big for me. Although I do describe myself as an introvert that has really, really good social skills. Like I got good social skills, but I'm not a lover of like I don't get that energy from people, and I definitely need my people time out. But so much was happening, like that internet was popping this week. It was really popping. And
What's going on out there in the world? Tell
so
me.
one of the things that I could not wait to talk to you about was the Kevin Gates scenario where he for some reason thought it was in his wheelhouse to describe his disdain for how LeBron James' wife, Savannah, looks at him.
Uh,
In this, have you seen this?
looks at Kevin Gates or looks at LeBron yourself.
Looks at LeBron. Have you seen this? You haven't seen the clip.
Well, I have it.
So I will have.
One of these days we could share the clip on here because I know there's a share button. You can share it out.
Yeah, well, I bet you most of the people watching have seen the clip. And since I'm such an exceptional storyteller, I will give you the backdrop.
I'm all ears. I can't wait to hear.
Kevin Gates, you know who he is?
I know who Kevin Gates is. Yeah.
Okay, so he's an artist, but I'm gonna give him like, if we had to do stages of artist, okay, he's not an A-lister, right? Like, would you put him on that A list?
No, I wouldn't put him on the A list, but I will say that I've seen some of the things that he says in terms of sharing wisdoms that sometimes he be making sense. But go ahead. What would
But
you?
I think even fools can run through something that might resonate, okay? But
Okay.
in this scenario, he chooses to talk about a happily married man,
Wow.
family man, who by all accounts has much love for his spouse, right? And then in his comparison, because I think people can be compared. If you're in the public light, it's okay to be compared, like, you know, this person's wife not as cute as this person or something like that. But in the comparison, he said, I don't like the way Savannah looks at LeBron. He much preferred the looks that white women give him.
Now, what was his logic behind?
I don't know that if you asked Sarita to find logical flow, there was really no logic. But what was very triggering for me is that there is this kind of ever present dichotomy between black and white women that when it's pushed up to the forefront by black men, it feels that much more painful.
Mhm.
That even if that, let's just say, I'm going to give Kevin Gates the benefit of the doubt, and that was his true observation, and he did like the way a group of some mysterious white women were looking. The fact that he critiqued someone who professes his love and decrees being happily married, and he criticizes the wife for the
Mhm.
way she looks at her husband when relationships, as we always said, are reciprocal. So
Yes,
the
they
energy she may be giving her husband at a time, we don't live in relationships with people. So,
said.
I might be giving my husband the side eye because 10
Ah,
minutes ago he done something to
yeah.
me. You know, we might be in public and that's all I got, so we don't know the depths of relationship. But to kind of, so even if to say, I look at her on occasion and I never see her do dot, dot, dot. But then to position a whole nother ethnic group who has been empowered in some way by black men to position themselves as better, because he wasn't saying it in a way like, I like the way Sarita looks at LeBron versus, he found this other group that he knew would be equally very triggering to his spouse, who's a black woman. He's one NBA player who got loving his black wife. Then to go in and push up like, oh, but white women look at him better, and I much prefer that. And nobody asked him for his opinion. Maybe he liked the way white women look at him, or maybe they're not looking at him because from what I see, that would not be a person that I'm going to be like, yeah, I'm checking you out twice. You know what I mean? It would be like, I might be clutching my purse, putting that, looking for my husband Glock. Who knows? Like if he's approaching me, it's not going to be somebody I'm like, please run to kind of hang out to me. So the fact that he positioned himself as the person that could critique the relationship and then bring in this group of women who have been positioned against black women in such a harmful way was so like it had the internet a buzz. All my girlfriends who were single, we all had conversations about how hard
It was
makes
inflammatory, yeah. It was
it was
inflammatory.
inflammatory. It was inflammatory.
Well, I haven't really seen the thing about Kevin Gates, so I'll go look at it after this. But let's just talk about the concept that you're bringing up, right? Because I think the reason why things are triggering in people is because of underlying things that exist, right? So you're right. I mean, in the context of interaction of a couple, you don't know what's going on inside of their bond that's causing them to be a certain type of way, and it ain't nobody else's business anyway. It's between them. The important thing is, I guess when you really looking at it, is that they are still together and that they are showing up for each other in terms of showing support. Now, in regards to how she's looking at him and, all these types of ways, the other thing is that, the closeness that she has with him, she sees more dimensions of him than the rest of the world does. So somebody could really look at you with adoring and admiring eyes, right? You know what I mean? They might be, putting you up on a celestial pedestal, but they don't really know you, the human, But she certainly has, the benefit of knowing him, the human, the person. You know what I'm
Which
saying?
makes him feel less, like, so we don't have to admire. You see what I'm saying? Like when you know the person, the greatness that he brings, it's not so great to you. It's just your husband. It's just your,
It's familiarity.
right. It's so familiar.
But then, I do think that that's a challenge that mentally people need to deal with, right? Because again, like the underlying thing of what he's talking about, I get, which is that there's, especially in the melanated community, the men and women do not look at each other in a high light. I read a comment of somebody I watched what we do on this podcast, and he had made a comment about, you know, uh, black women making more money than black men. And somebody said, well, where they do that? Where's that at? So I do say also, in people's personal experience, because I would say in our family, in our grandmother's time, the superstar in that family was her brother. They financially carried everybody, So I would say, like in our generation, you was to measure us just by economics, I mean, I don't think you could say that the men, there's definitely a man in your family that's getting it at that level where you could say like,
I think our family is somewhat special in that way.
I agree with
That
that. It could be,
many of single black women
it
friends.
could be, but then I would say this though, that in mass, right? I would just say in average in mass, men ain't getting child support, they ain't getting spousal. So like women getting a lot of assistance to get to, where they at, to where they can try to dub their nose up and shine. That's why I was telling you I got this message on my subconscious about delusions of self-righteousness. I feel like people are always, the Bible speaks on it where they say, you can see the splinter in somebody else's eye, but not the log in your own, you know. But most people, and we've talked about it too in the self narratives that people are telling them, the stories they're telling themselves, right? And in their story, they're justifying their bad behavior. So let's just say, for instance, right? I'm hungry right now, and I need to eat, but I have no money, you know. So I go to a store where I know that this merchant has to have paid for not only the food, but also the place of business to where he's selling the food at. So he got expenses to cover.
Mhm.
But he got food, and I'm hungry, and I ain't got no money. You know what I mean? So the story I tell myself at this time is, I'm not going to hurt him by stealing his food. So I'm gonna go steal this food from him and all that, even though that could be wrong, right? But I'm telling myself a narrative that it's okay for me to do this or whatnot. Then I would say, we're doing this too often. And I think we need to look at why we feel these ways about each other truthfully. And have an honest conversation.
Do think we and I think we can do that a little bit today, you and I. But then fine, let's have an honest conversation about the degradation of the relationship between black men and women. Right? Let's have an honest conversation about that. And particularly black men and women within certain classes.
Right, right,
But in this instance, to then position like somebody who that wasn't even the discourse, that's not the conversation,
right,
to
right,
position another group of women and to have that positioning imparted by someone who should represent the interest of black women, right? He got a black mama, he got a black family,
right, right, right,
he's black in my eyes. Maybe he got something else, I don't know too much.
right, right, right.
But then to position this other group of women that has been hostile to black women in so many ways, like, in Moss, there's a relationship issue with black women and white women that needs to be fixed too, from a kind of a human perspective. To bring that in not to be inflammatory, like, I question it. Like, it was deliberate. It was to kind of position Black women as
I think so too. I think he intentionally did that to, to maybe shine a light on this issue for real. But I
which
do
issue? Which issue?
well to highlight that there's a fundamental issue between black men and black women,
Well, you
right?
don't do it that way. Like, you if that's how you highlighting it, you talk about that, there's a problem. Like, we're about to right? But you don't say, "Well, let me," who's gonna fix that? Them white girls. That's
But
exactly what he made.
he was effective in initiating a dialogue widely, a widespread dialogue. So I'm gonna give him credit in a portion of what he stated, right? Because it is interesting that first of all, I was listening earlier to Bloomberg, and they were talking about reconstruction of like the US Constitution and whatnot.
Mhm.
And so it was interesting because they were saying that white women, had no rights in this country, similarly to
Black
black people. White women were similar to black people in the sense of not having any rights at all, right? Now, it's crazy because they were talking about some of the things that people had did, like Abraham Lincoln, when he was president, he had counseled with Frederick Douglass. And it was kind of a heated council. Like they didn't really like each other, but they respected each other's point of views. And, Frederick Douglass, a black man, Abraham Lincoln, white president. And these guys, truthfully, they were trying to come to a conclusion that would be beneficial for all. Now, part of that was giving women certain rights, so that white women couldn't even open a bank account on their own without a white man guaranteeing that bank account. So, in a very real sense, they was oppressed, right? Now they had more rights than black people as a whole, and they also took part in some of the oppression towards black people and all that. So my thing is though, in this day and time, where we kind of enjoy being able to coexist and intermingle and have these interracial relationships and stuff like that, why is it that if we had a shared experience of oppression and pain, do we not give each other like more grace because there other races do treat black men differently than black women do. Now flipping the script, I would say this, right? And this is again like accepting extreme accountability, for on being a man and all this. I think black women have gotten, they know black men, right? So they know the games and the stuff that black men do and all this stuff. So, let's just say they fed up with all the bullshit. What I mean? They fed up. So I get it. Like they get to a point in general, if we gonna speak truly, in general, most black women got this opinion of black men that, is not complimentary. Most of them do. And it shows up in the way they behavior and their actions. But now they also got this kind of a self-inflated delusion of self-righteousness and grandeur on their part. Like, I'm too good to go to Cheesecake Factory or something like that. That's crazy to me. What I mean?
Can I
That's
offer this reflection? Because I think that that may be true. I'm going to accept from a perspective of accepting your position. I'm going to accept it, but I do want to challenge something. So, by and large, I think Black people support other Black people. That includes Black men. That includes Black women. When it comes to dating, however, in conflict resolution, right? There's a problem. I would agree with that among both Black men and Black women on how to do that. So it's not like there's a default, where it's like Black men ain't none of it. I don't think that's the default. I think that there have been disappointments, things that have separated our community, both systemically and socially. Like, we have to be responsible for the social part, but there are systemic issues that contributed to that. And then when you bring all those things together, we have a community that needs to heal, right?
yes, yeah,
And
that's
so
good.
I think that Black women, I'm a Black woman, so I can own this space and I can say, like, there's certain kind of Black men for me, right? And there's certain kind of Black men that aren't for me.
Right, right, right.
And that happened on a developmental trajectory. right? So
Right.
the 16-year-old me like a different type of dude than I do now that I'm middle aged. And what one of the things maybe
The let's pause on that one for a minute. So so you know the I would say more closer teenage version of you kind of got married, right? So and
yeah,
you
I
didn't-
was an adult when I got married. What are you talking about, boy?
but you were close to be like he was in the early 20s, weren't you?
Yeah, but my
Yeah.
God, but if you think about my marriage
Yeah.
in my early 20s,
Well, I'm just trying to say, you've been married all of your 20s, basically, right?
but the people picked for partners drastically changed each time.
I totally agree with that. But what I'm trying to say is, what the thing about what you said about in your middle age, because you're with who you was in your 20s.
You're right. What I'm saying is okay, let
Yeah.
me finish and then we can talk about like if I were to have to date now,
Okay.
okay? I and recognizing that I have been a part of a marriage for, over 20 years. So I probably am situated differently than
Yes.
many, many people, right? Because I did get married really young. And I was to your point, I wasn't that far. I was teenage adjacent. I was
Yes.
so,
Exactly.
but our marriage evolved in a developmental course. The partners we were to each other in our 20s was not the partners we were to each other in our 30s. Certainly isn't the partners we are in our 50s. And, he knocking on 50. So, it's not going to be the partnership that we are in our 50s. So he,
That's how it should be. It
so
should really evolve and grow like that. So
we
that's right.
evolved and we grew. And what was important about both of our relationships and the relationships that I see as healthy relationships is that we had effective communication, we problem solved well, we allowed each other to have mistakes, right? Like I had no visions of grandeur about my husband being perfect. Now, he probably had different visions of that for me, right? Because I tried to be perfect. I'm sure I wasn't perfect, but I certainly tried to be like the perfect wife and the perfect mom and the perfect employee. But my husband wasn't doing that. He was like okay with being sloppy and messy. And that's what it is in relationships with each other. It's sloppy, it's messy, and when you get to the point that you can accept that and that you guys can grow in a developmental context so that you can appreciate the fact that these are mistakes that people might make, but this is how we grow together. And I want to see good for that person, then a relationship is good. And I think in general, like I don't sit around, I have in all the groups of Black women I hang around, none of them sit there and talk about how I just want to hold Black men down. I don't think they nothing. I don't want to embrace their needs. That is not what they say. I think many of them say, I'm confused about how they treat me, but I'm happy when they have a win. I wish they saw their strength and their power. These are the things I need from them. And I think what's the mismatch from especially my middle-aged single friend is that the level of vulnerability that maybe I was able to have because I met my husband when we were young, that people in your dating pool and in the dating pool now is that we were willing to be vulnerable with each other and we were willing to grow through our messy periods and we made it a priority to do those things well, and we never positioned though each other against each other.
I agree with that. Now, see, I love what you say. I'm glad you spoke on it in this kind of a way, and it's particularly when you say the messy parts, right? And the reason why I say this is because there's a fundamental thing that I see in your relationship that has been from beginning to end, which is first of all, you really got to know each other and like each other for who you were without expectations of one another. You know what I mean? So like you got to see him, as the man he was without being your man, right? And whatever things he was doing at that time or whatever. And you accepted that and you fundamentally liked it. You liked who he was to his core essence. He saw the same thing with you and he liked who you were to your core essence and all of this stuff, right? And, I would say that you guys had the benefit of seeing each other with other people. I remember he had remarked one time on the boyfriend that you had at the time. Yeah, came to visit you, and then he was calling your name, and you wouldn't look, and all that stuff, everything.
Let him exaggerate the tale.
Yeah, but I'm saying all this stuff to say, but what I see in you and what you kind of inspired me on in the recent time was that y'all make it to where there is no possibility of exiting. And both of y'all hearts are connected to each other in the sense that you look at him and he looks at you as you're a person that's going to forever be my family. You're going to always be a significant person to me. And see, the thing connected to that that you said that inspired me was, when you said that no matter what happens between he and I always want him to know that he's my family. And you told me that it hurts you that our family has this propensity to break apart and make it seem like it's not important for us to be in each other's life. And I agree with that 100%. But that was something that you did not want him to ever feel from you, which that was a beautiful thing. Now I think, we talking about it from the perspective of black men and women, but I honestly believe in the United States and maybe spreading out infectiously like a pandemic, becoming globally. It's a man and woman thing. It don't matter what race it is. It's a problem. And the problem, I think, truthfully, is this thing I'm telling you about, like the delusion of self righteousness, right? Because both sides think, like, I could see it from, like a man's point of view, because I'm a man. So, from my perspective, I've built a life for myself, right? And inside of this life I built for myself, you know, in my personal goals and all of this stuff, I'm not writing in it, a significant other in it. It's my own personal goals and all this stuff. It ain't a shared goal with somebody else. So I've created a life that's just fundamentally my own, right? And then most people in the position that I would be in would be like, okay, well now, I want somebody to share in this life that I created, but they're gonna be an accessory to this life, right? I really don't have no room to change and compromise and alter. They're gonna come in and they're gonna conform and they're gonna be an accessory, whatever I got going on. Now I feel like women are doing the same thing. What they're doing is, single women. They done built a single life for themselves. And in my opinion, a lot of the single women that we know close to us and whatnot, when they don't have no king, they be lost. They be all over the place for real. So I think fundamentally, we all need each other. The man need a woman need a man, no doubt. Right. So I say this to say that when the women don't have the ones that we know they don't have no king and all this stuff doing all kind of crazy ratchet stuff and whatnot, they doing the same thing. They create a life for themselves and they looking for a man to come in like he's an earring or a necklace or something like that, you know? But that can't happen. See, I feel like a thing with you and your husband was that y'all had a slate, like a more cleaner canvas at the time y'all came into each other's life to where y'all could actually build a life together. You could have an aligned path and purpose for something like right now, I feel like we in conflict with each other. I get it. People need security, safety, and all this stuff. They need economic stability. And that's their primary focus. Even when I looked at myself one day, I was saying to myself, I looked at my life and I said, fundamentally, this is true. So this isn't no slate or nothing like this, but it's fundamentally true. Ain't nobody I don't have a cosigner on my bills. You know what I mean? I'm sleeping in my bed by myself. All the things in my house, in my closet, they all belong to me. I'm not sharing this space with nobody. All this. So then I look at this and then I said to myself, I said, when I go back and I look at my personal goals and, all this stuff, the way I structure my life, I haven't made room for nobody in. Even when I look at my closet, I'm like, damn, if I was to have a woman, where's she gonna put her stuff at?
And I was going to say that what
Yep.
you just described is exactly what maybe is the core problem between men. I'll expand it because you expanded to men and women, but I'm going to, you know, really focus more on black men and women is that we have coveted this material wealth and ability to take care of yourself. And we have done that as a singular journey. I think, though, perhaps because I was reared by one, I had enough sense to understand that everything in my life happened because of community. So, the successes, the failures, when we moved with
Abs
mom, you know, there was community that helped us reach any of our goals.
Yeah.
Grandma was actually a part of our community. She wasn't our parent. Uncle James, they were our community. So I always understood that community is what is sustaining and kind of creates. It helps you pro- provides that supportive base. It helps you create your goal. Reach your goals and operate within your purpose. I think we've been pulled back from this idea of community because as wonderful as your discourse is about ain't nobody paying my bills and this and that, it's a very, what have in 20 years, I have never, ever, ever like pumped my own gas unless I was like out by myself. I don't even have the desire to. Like, I don't, it's not like something I feel like I gotta do. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, I'd be looking at that dude side eyed if he was like, if I don't have no, it's almost like I get in the car and I know I'm gonna have gas. He does that for our daughter. That's how my husband shows up for us. So, this idea that I don't need this level of community is crazy because he does those things for me. I can work till 8, 9 o'clock at night and run a business, and I can travel, and I can have these other parts that help cushion our other parts of our lives. So, the idea that we always have to be competing in some way is just nuts. That's not what makes a good relationship. And you wouldn't pick a friend that way. And if your relationship with your partner isn't the best friendship you've ever had, and listen, ships are messy. Like, I done cussed out all my friends and we done had to make up, like Sarita in her 20s was very different than, who I am now. I'm such a better evolved person. But, the people who care about you, they continue to stick and grow with you and understand that you are messy because you're a person. And that's what I think Black people need to see. And why are we letting anybody else come into our community to position themselves as better than? The fact that Black men want to position a whole nother group of people as better than the people that they would not themselves be the Black kings they are without the mothers and the aunties and the part of their communities that make them desirable and who they are. Why are you bringing another person to position in that community to then diminish who they are? Because you would not be without the strength of a Black woman.
Well, that's true, but I mean, you take like Kamala Harris, right? She married to a white dude, right?
So,
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not saying that I'm not pointing it out as a problem, right? Because again, the way I look at this is saying that, it don't, to me, this issue is not a racial problem. This is a fundamental issue between the way men and women see each other. You know what I mean? It's if you want to make it, just to focus it on a single community like our melanated community, then I would say that we have a lot of healing to do, right? So one thing is, I think when a Black woman has the upper hand on a Black man, boy, she flexes it and she step on that dude neck like, some
hand financially, upper hand in which way?
anyway, you know
Okay.
what I mean? They
So,
want to be like,
so I'm thank you for being vulnerable with me today, brother. And I'm gonna reflect empathy for the experience that you've had with Black women who had stepped on you when
again, I'm not talking about me
pain. I
personally.
saw your pain. I saw it. It came out.
I'm not talking about me personally. I'm talking about the things that I observed. Like, let's just say our beloved cousins or whatnot.
Okay.
So we got a beloved cousin, and when he had a scholarship to play basketball in college,
Okay.
the girl put a baby on him that wasn't his. But in his good heart, he embraced that baby. Because she saw him as a way out of her situation. So
Okay.
she baby on and laying his baby, right?
Whose responsibility do you think that is? I'm curious.
But my whole thing is in him accepting accountability for his whatever actions that he was doing that could have made it possible that it was so. He embraced that baby. And 6 months into that baby's life, his older brother looks at the baby and said, "That ain't yours." And then now that leads to him really finding out, medically through DNA that this ain't so. Then you take our other cousin, where he is a
how is that being stepped on? I feel
Uh,
like that's just bad behavior, and women can do that.
that's bad behavior, and that's taking advantage of. Because see, what she was trying to do was latch to somebody in an economic, financial way to get stability for herself to get pulled out of the situation she was in, which that ain't right. You know what I mean?
Men that then okay, we also
Talking about the play,
no,
the way,
no, no. Let me give you a good story that's very close to you circularly. One of your very best friends, okay,
right?
or was one of your very best friends. They latch on. I have never seen them in their life have a job, but they live pretty well. They live in houses with women. They drive the cars of women. The women are buying their clothes, and that individual is fine with living among as vulnerable as he is. That's how he's like he's the G of all G's. I'm like, how do you find women that are willing to take care of you and your middle-aged self? And he's figured it out. So what I'm saying is that's not a black man or a black woman thing.
Okay, so but both of those mentalities, I think, are mentalities that are looking for, to use and to manipulate. Both of those archetypes. Then there's another archetype where, you know, our family, the males in our family, we realize that we are guys that want to make a family. We want to be married and make a family. For the most part, right? So, but then, like, say when a dude does that, he tries to do this. You
Mhm.
know, he tries to be a good father to his kids, and then be a good husband to his wife, and then find out his wife running the street and all that.
Bad behavior.
It's horrible behavior. So, and I'm saying, and then after she done did all of this to break the family up, she won't go into the sunset gracefully. She want to try to fight him out with, try to get half of this, get this and this and that, child support and all that, when she don't deserve it. She don't deserve it because she must have won.
So just because I hear you and I hear that there has been pain and harm within our community, right?
Yes, that we
That
need to feel.
that have been inflicted by individuals who are, Kiko said it so wonderfully on our last show that we are all sinners, these simple sinners, that they've been inflicted pain does not mean as a group we need to position ourselves in deference towards one another. Like we
I
don't have to
totally agree.
like we
I
don't have
totally
like
agree.
we don't have to be against each other to have had been harmed by people. There are plenty of people who stay with spouses that cheat on them, black or white. And I would say there are plenty of black women who have black husbands that they really try to not
No,
just leave
no.
because of one, because there's many reasons people are in unfaithful. So like that does not to me make me it doesn't justify for me the huge fracture and the positioning of another group that is happening largely to me by like black men to say, well, y'all aren't good enough. So white women will take the place. Because if you think that those people are as sinful as everybody else, then you are sadly mistaken.
Well, I will just say this though, that there is a difference in it. So I do think that there's a mistake made in not edifying each other. You know what I mean? So I do believe
There we go. No, don't move past that because when we're in agreement, I think we need to dance, shake hands, and
this.
hug. You're right. The edification is what we need. And how I'm gonna do that today is like to talk about like we started it off. Like I'm so proud of all the brothers who were featured in that Forbes magazine, but I'm certainly proud of my brother who I know it's not been easy. And I know you carried out, you got them boulders on your back and you over there building. You don't go to sleep till 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. Want to be sending emails that like, so I get the sacrifice. And I appreciate it and I want to do everything I can as your sister and as a black woman to make sure that you are edified in that way. And how do I do that? What is it that you need from me? Do you
But
need
I don't really need nothing. From from my perspective, just it's something about knowing that people appreciate you and that there's some gratitude in it that is unspoken. It's kind of like an unspoken thing, like that's all a person actually really needs is that. But I mean, I honestly feel that way about you. And you've always, like I said, even you being an example with your relationship, which also is not easy, right? And I would say that a lot of people try to attack it, right? Because people try to attack things that they secretly envy and that they want themselves and that they don't have. But they'll attack it by trying to plant dirty little seeds into your mind or to his mind or whatever, to create dissension. And they'll say inflammatory words like codependency and this and that. Like it's a bad word, because in a very real sense, I believe this, right? I always hear people be saying, usually when they're trying to break up a relationship, which again is an error in of itself, right? But it's like when they try to break up a relationship, they always say, well, I lost myself and all this stuff. I lost who I am. And I'm saying, well, just like I told you with all of this stuff in here, which is just things, but it's metaphorical, right? I haven't made no room for nobody else,
Right.
right? But when I realized that, I said, okay, well, let me make some space in this closet for somebody to come in. So I push the thing, make some space, like, okay, this lady comes, she gonna have this space right here now, right? So now I done made space metaphorically in my life, right? So I think when people say like they lose themselves, you know what I mean? See, and making space, I done lost that space, right?
Right. Right.
But being inside of a relationship, you're gonna lose yourself because the relationship itself, the needs of that relationship is gonna be more important than the individual needs of the parties that are involved in it. And
So
that's the way it's supposed to be.
yeah, you bring up a good point. You bring up a good point. So one of the things is to edify, I'm hearing you say, and the other thing is to make space. And maybe it's just that simple at start. To start the healing is to make space to see each other. Because I do think too, there's such a criticism of the little things. Like I watched some clip today where they said black women are naturally angry. That's just like that's crazy. Like there's no like it what that trope is very dangerous for our own livelihoods, and it's a trope that has really, been conjured up by these oppressive kinds of environments. When you are setting limits and being assertive, that is important, but that doesn't make you aggressive necessarily. Now, I'm not saying they're not some man women that, kind of bulk up and have this masculine kind of energy, and that's something different. What I would argue is if you ain't attracted to that, why are you trying to date that? You know what
Well, it's funny, right? Because when they do the what do they call that? The profile, right?
I mean?
Racial profiling, like law enforcement does this on people. So I figured, profiling is really simple. You know what I mean? Because let's just say right now, if I got a group of people over here that are oppressed, right?
Right?
They can eat, they starving, all that, they let down, for sure that the human spirit is going to try to thrive in some kind of way. So yeah, those people going to be up to no good in some kind of way.
Right.
You know, right? So when you put a whole bunch of people together, and this is the thing again where I feel like people they get caught up in systemically programming getting run on them. You know, they start doing stuff to victimize each other. Now that makes them feel better. Like, if you already love, I heard a lady say, a melanated lady, she was saying, well, if you only tall because you make everybody else in the room get on your knees, their knees, you ain't really tall. So people are doing that, to make themselves feel better. They gonna do stuff to try to put somebody else down and all this stuff instead of being like, well, I'm celebrating that in that. It's just like when somebody comes from a community and they make it. You know, we all celebrating that because we want to be like, well, they came from us, and that's hope for us that we could be like this too, like that, and they representing us. Like that's us. But when have somebody like a man could have a woman that's great, virtue and character and all that stuff. Most time when you got it, you're gonna hide it. You don't want nobody. You don't want the people. You're scared of that shine happening because you might lose that little light in the bottom and stuff, right? But I think we gotta fall in love with each other and celebrate each other. And these things can't be fake. It's just like what Kiko said, right? It's like it's in your heart to do. You don't do this thing because you want a blessing from it. Like what do I need? I would say like what I need is the deep knowledge of knowing, that I really do got love, and I have that already. But it's just like, it's just little moments of truth that come up to show it.
Right.
Like I was saying, I remember one time I was in a situation where I was about to face a super hard time, like Kiko was saying, and I felt the mental strain of this. I was trying to hold out as long as I could, but my brother saw that I was going through this.
Mhm.
He didn't live close, but every single day, I think I only got like a week, 2 weeks before I had to face this thing. Every single day, he came over just to spend time with me. You know what I mean? And in this way, by him doing that, it just made me know how much love he had for me. It got nothing to be spoken of. It's just the same way when you said you had to tumble down the stairs and your husband came and sat down next to you. Just in this action, it wasn't even up, but just in the action of him just just sitting down there and waiting with you. You just realize like, damn, I'm really loved. You know what I'm saying? Or like, I remember I had COVID and whatnot, right? And I'm quarantined off in the room, and my biological seed, they reported me like I got the plague. And then my other adopted son come all up in the room with me where I
You wasn't no COVID.
he said, man, I don't care about it. You know what I mean? I just want to be next to you. I want to make sure you're okay. You know, when these things happen, like it's kind of like you know, like I said, those are the moments of truth. It's the same thing of when people say brave people. Like you can't be brave without fear, right? But then I also think that there's something else that motivates you to be brave, right? Because it's not just that, you just holding around fear and you brave and you just want to show. There's something that make bravery come out. So let's just say, for instance, I'm somewhere in I'm terrified of water and I'm terrified of crocodiles. But my baby falls in the water where there's crocodiles in there, and I just dive in that water. You know what I mean? So that incident, I mean that situation, that catalyzing event has brought bravery and courage out of me. You know what I mean? Real reason why is because of the love I have for the other. And that love is saying, I don't care about what will happen to me. You know what I mean?
Right. I'm gonna sacrifice myself. So it sounds like one of the things, so in addition to edifying each other and making space, is being reflections of love. I'm going to add to that because I agree with all that you're saying, but our time is coming short. That we have to look for it too. We are good at looking at examples of when we're not affirmed in that way,
That's true.
but the brain has this kind of negative pay attention to all. But I can, if you're looking for it, right, if you're looking for those, the times where a sister probably smiled your way or looked your way or did something to affirm you and to not do or diminish you in the way. What I really think of some of these brothers is the women that they want don't want them, and that's okay. You know what I mean? Like I truly believe that we are cosmically put together. That's my belief. Like I wouldn't have, the man of my dreams wasn't my husband. You know what I'm saying?
That's the journal though.
But what the journal did over there violating my journal business, okay? You couldn't even have been a glimpse in my mind. But what the journal did what the journal did was it made me organize what were the characteristics and features of the person I wanted in my life. It would became to be revealed that the person in front of me was my friend,
I
right?
hear you. I
But
hear you.
that was but if you ask me, my husband was about 6, 7, here, I had, dark, everything that is the opposite of my husband. You know what I'm saying? Like I had this whole schema etched out, for who he was and the characteristics of my husband. And the other thing was in my mind, it wasn't going to be somebody I already knew. I was gonna run into this knight in shining armor, and he was gonna smack me in my face.
Really?
Like the mystical, magical thing of love was gonna happen, and that's just not how it happened, right? Like I wasn't smacked over with, I already knew the dude, and we had a good relationship already. We were friends, so that's what I'm thinking. You got to make space to be seen and to see it,
Yes.
and not just to have that negative bias of somebody, that girl looked at me funny, right? Like people can be looking at you funny for many different reasons. It's not because of a you thing, or when you've harmed some woman, right? Because a lot of these men don't tell their story, but when you harm some woman or disappoint them, don't be mad when they come back at you and be like, "Yo, I don't pay for 50 meals. So the one time I asked you to pay for a meal, you want to put that on the internet."
Well, I also think that like you said, we gotta look for I love what you said on that. We gotta look for ways to give credit to each other instead of criticizing one another. But I will say that, when you really do love someone and you feel the potential of them, like our grandmother was like this with us, you you want to see them do better. So maybe like you could look at somebody and you be kind of like, damn, you know how you was telling me that you and your husband would be watching your daughter play a game and y'all would be like, she ain't doing her thing. You know what I'm saying?
I know.
So at that time, y'all probably looking at her blown, like you ain't living up to your full potential. So
Right.
I can see how, somebody that loves you and they with you or whatever, and you doing something and they know this ain't, something
This is
wrong.
a yeah.
He really better than this, you know what I mean? And he ain't really showing off. Maybe that's the energy of what they looking for. But that thing that this dude said was definitely inflammatory because
Inflammatory. I'm glad you agree. I needed to hear your mind on it, and I'm appreciative so much of your reflections. Our time is short, but I do want to close out. I'm so thankful for those who joined. But each session we tend to highlight Black businesses, but today we're going to do something a little different because we getting some attention, brother. I don't know if you've been watching that internet, but we've been getting some attention, and I just think it's valuable to shout out the people who have joined us weekly since we started. We are now on episode 15. So it's been 15 whole weeks since we've started this, which has been great. Again, we this is our safe space. We inviting y'all to ours. And some of these like I get enough energy to finish the rest of my day after this. So there are some folks that I know you know their names because I can't shout them out.
well, let me start with Rashima Moore. So I mean, every single time she's shared one of these joints that we put out, and also she reached out and you had a conversation with me on some insights and stuff like that she took away. So I want to give a big shout out to her. And also Seafood Ed Anderson in the comments real heavy. Sharing his insights and all that. I think we definitely would probably have him up on here as a guest to
Yeah.
portion of
Can't
his
wait
mind.
to hear from Black Jesus.
But then also well Black Jesus is also Tyre and Cassell, you know what I mean? Yeah, yeah. But you Seafood is he from Jersey, but he met our grandma.
I know him too.
Yeah, yeah. Then the other one is Jane, my Jane from AT&T. She definitely be
And
reaching
you
out.
forgot your brother-in-law.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. My brother-in-law Bruce is definitely he's been like the background producer and all that stuff. I give a big shout out to also Mom Dukes Judy from wait, what they call New Orleans? I forget.
Marrero, get it straight.
Right. Oh yeah, 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 yeah. I gotta give her a shout out too. But I mean,
Marrero. Judy represents Marrero well, honey.
well, I fell in love with her over one session one time where we was listening to music and drinking or whatever. It was the same kind of thing that when my nephew was telling me, he just walked with me and talk. It
Yeah,
felt really close. And since then, it's been a solid bond. But I give her a lot of credit for her own personal wisdom and feedback and input she be bringing in. So, it's a big shout out to all of them.
absolutely. Because they've been riding with us, and it's so exciting to see them stay with us and to be in our corners. We're going to be here same time, same place, same channel, that channel next Thursday. We love your participation. Please like and share, and then go over to YouTube. It helps us if you're at YouTube. I know Facebook is the easiest platform to look at, but when you have a moment, please go back to those um uh to YouTube and share. And we were joined today by our beautiful niece Shia, who gave us some hand claps
Yeah, she did. What's up? She is sending out some love to she a boo.
and I think somebody, Joe, that you know, also joined. And then there goes
That's my little nephew, I think. Bunny's son Joe.
Joe. Okay. And then we got and then Seafood's here.
Oh yeah, let's see, boo. But we gotta also big up where we from. We gotta give a big shout out to all 612 for sure. You know
I
what I mean?
love it. Well, we will
Yeah.
meet y'all back in the Rose Garden next week. Thank you, brother. I love you dearly.
Much love to you.